Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to be talking specifically about the 7-arc plan, which is a specific plan that I believe would do a really good job of making sure that specifically Andrew Yang could do something important in politics. I think he could achieve three things with the 7-arc plan, and I will define what the 7-arc plan is. So the 7-arc plan would allow Andrew Yang to accomplish something in politics that I have not seen done ever before. I don't think it's been done in politics before. Could deliver a number of specific issue victories for the American people, and also could advance him in the primary and in the general election. All right. So what is the 7-arc plan? All right. So in order to understand the 7-arc plan, I have to talk to you about comic books. All right, so let's talk about comic books. So J. Scott Garibay is a very, very big comic book fan. I started collecting comic books when I lived in Racine, Wisconsin. I think I was 8 or 9 years old at the time, and comic books cost about 60 cents at the time. They were very cheap, and I started a very small collection. And I've collected comics my whole life. And my comic collection is kind of interesting because I'm a husband and a father. I work hard, and I've been able to collect comics all my life. But sometimes, especially in our earlier years, we'd get in trouble, and I would have to sell my comic books. I've sold large portions of my comic book my comic book collection several times, just to scrape up dollars to buy a new car or buy parts for a car, that kind of thing. But comic books are really special to me. All right. So basically, let's talk about crossovers. So right now, I am reading a Marvel crossover, okay? And the Marvel crossover is called War of the Realms. And it is a special event that is happening in the Marvel universe. And it truly is special. It's really unique and wonderful. And what it is Thor, who is part of the Avengers, has and these are there. There's really no spoilers here. It's all minor. No spoilers for this. It's just the general structure of the spoiler of there's no spoilers in this for War of the Realms. It's just the general structure of the story. So essentially, Thor is part of the Avengers, but Thor has this new villain, a villain that is specifically opposed to Thor, and that villain, his name is Malekith, and Malekith is specifically targeting has sparked a war of the realms, and Malekith, Thor's villain, is now taking war across every Asgardian realm, or actually across the realms. And so Midgard is Earth, Asgard is where Thor lives. He's going across Jotunheim, where the frost giants live. He's going across Svartalheim, all of the realms. Okay, and this war, it's pretty incredible. It really is it's really fascinating. How the way the whole realm is structured, and how the war is structured, and how it spans across all these realms. It's really interesting. I'm very much enjoying it. It's a fascinating, engaging story. Okay. Now, what's special about War of the Realms is this story arc. The way they structure it is Marvel Comics says, okay, we are going to do a crossover. So they hire one head writer, and that writer writes the story specifically for the overarching crossover story. Okay. Then the majority of the titles of Marvel are brought in, and they are given part of the War of the Realms story. Okay, so when you have War of the Realms, it exists in the majority of Marvel comic book titles. So there is War of the Realms Punisher, and War of the Realms Spider-Man, and War of the Realms Captain America. So for a small period of issues within a comic book series, like Captain America is one comic book series in Marvel's myriad of comic book series, right? And so Captain America could be on number 26 right now, right? Well, Captain America issues number 27 and 28 and 29 will be given to the War of the Realms storyline, right? And Captain America's regular scheduled story for his comic book issues will literally be interrupted by the War of the Realms storyline. There is also the War of the Realms comic book series, and it's a five issue War of the Realms crossover comic, and that is just War of the Realms, and it has all of the other heroes that War of the Realms also is showing up in their books, right? So it's really ambitious storytelling. It is a main story arc that's told in the core series, the War of the Realms series. 5 comic books telling one story, right? Then, War of the Realms is also spanning across no less than a dozen other Marvel comic book series. Spider-Man, Captain America, Iron Man, Punisher, all these other series are literally having their storylines interrupted by the War of the Realms storyline, which goes into, and those writers on those other comic books have to incorporate War of the Realms and make War of the Realms work in those storylines as well. It is a big, bold, robust story that exists in one core series and exists in individual comic book series, right? These happen all the time. You're probably, even if you're not even a comic book fan, you are familiar with these. Civil War was one of these overarching crossover series. Civil War was when Captain America and Iron Man fought over if the government should have the right to demand that superheroes have get rid of their secret identities. And Captain America said no, and Tony Stark, Iron Man, said yes, and they went to war, right? There was it was really good. There was another one, right, called Fear Itself. This storyline was Thor has hammers, right? Well, the dwarves, I think the dwarves of the Asgardian realms created new hammers, and they were given to other superheroes by a villain, and that villain took over their minds and made them use these Mjolnir level hammers, right, to fight Thor and other superheroes, right? Avengers versus X-Men is a very famous crossover. The Avengers fighting the X-Men. It's 12 issues long with breakouts for large fights that are just shown on one page in each of the crossovers. These crossovers are huge, and they're really important, and they're special, right? But they represent a really cool, unique opportunity specifically for Andrew Yang. All right, so what is the 7 arc? Now I can tell you what the 7 arc is. So War of the Realms is a 5-issue core series, and then it has no less than like 25 other issues in other people's books, right? In Captain America's comic book series, those guys in individual issues in other superheroes series. Okay, now the 7 arc is a comic book like crossover that would happen among a selection of 2020 U.S. Democrat primary candidates, right? So Yang's team would need to do this, right? So Yang would meet with his team, they would discuss it, they would decide whether they wanted to do this or not, and then Yang's team would reach out to 6 other candidates. That's why we're going to call it the 7 arc. This would be 7 candidates who would be combining to tell one story on one issue, right? Now, this of course would be a political issue. I think the right issue would be healthcare, right? So how would you do this, right? How would 7 candidates do a crossover together to tell one story on one issue, right? To give one set of solutions that they would work on together, right? Within the primary election. And then they would also be promising and saying, no matter which one of the 7 of us wins, when we come in, we will all work together to bring this forward. We don't know now what power each one of us will have, right? Some of us may be returning to jobs as senators or congresspeople. Some of us maybe, will spend time bringing this message forward and this set of solutions forward on through the media. One of us is going to be president, and will be specifically, bringing this forward through the presidency, right? So basically, that is how you would actually structure this, right? Be very, very interesting, very different approach, right? And so let me talk a little bit about how they would do it, right? So one, they would all have to agree on one issue, and I would choose healthcare, right? And so Yang would say, okay, let's pick the dream team first. First, you would need your dream team. You would need 7 candidates. Who's the dream team that Yang should choose, right? Well, this is very interesting. He's choosing 6 other people, and he's choosing to exclude 3 primaries, right? After 10, nobody cares. Nobody cares about Hickenlooper and Delaney. They're not done yet, but they're done, right? It's already writing's on the wall. All right. So I'm just going to talk about 10 top 10 candidates. So first, I'm going to say who the dream team would exclude. The dream team would exclude Biden. The dream team would exclude Bernie Sanders. The dream team would exclude Elizabeth Warren. And the reason why is they are all dyed-in-the-wool Washington insiders, and much more importantly, they are establishment candidates. They're already getting the aid they need from the DNC. They already have stamp of approval from the DNC, and basically Yang and the rest of the dream team, the 7 candidates who create the 7 arc, they don't really need them involved, right? Actually, they need to make sure they're not involved. And the reality is, those candidates have enough momentum already, and Yang's trying to build something special here. He's trying to help candidates who need help, right? Biden and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren don't need help. The media is piling up to help them. The DNC is piling up to help them. Corporations are piling up to help them, right? So this would be a set of solutions by 7 candidates who want to show America a few things. One, that unity still exists in the Democrat Party, right? That they can work on something together, and they can make something special, and they can make something work, right? And I think that's really important. That unity still exists. Now, of course, you are excluding some candidates. Unity only goes so far. There you go. There's still an election race on, right? Politics is like that. A lot of times, how can you use the word unity when unity is only going to include 7 candidates? Well, that's politics. Politics, they say you don't want to see how the sausage is made for a reason. It's tough. You make some hard decisions. It's hard to make decisions and keep moving forward. But you have to do that in politics. You have to make hard decisions, and you have to keep moving forward. All right? Okay. So who's the dream team? All right, it's Yang. It's Tulsi, right? It's Tulsi Gabbard. Amy Klobuchar, I would put in there. Pete Buttigieg would go in there. Cory Booker would go in there. Kamala Harris, I would definitely include Kamala Harris, and I would include Beto O'Rourke. That's it. That's your 7, right? So each one of these, you would then attach an element of healthcare to. Okay, so Yang is going to say, I will show how we will pay for good healthcare for every American, right? And then he would handle the economics, right? And Amy Klobuchar would come forward, and she would say, I'm going to talk about how we handle the opium crisis, right? The opioid epidemic. I'm going to talk about that aspect, right? And then Beto O'Rourke can come forward and say, seniors need special attention because they use more healthcare than almost anybody else, right? Just based on their age and the nature of humanity. So I'm going to talk about special dispensations that we'll have for senior citizens. And Cory Booker will say, I'm going to come forward and I'm going to talk about pre-existing conditions. And I'm going to talk about how we're going to deal with the insurance companies and dealing with pre-existing conditions and things like that, right? And then Kamala Harris, you can have her come forward and she would say, I'm going to deal specifically with pharmacy prices, right? With pharmaceutical prices for drugs. We have a plan to deal specifically with pharmaceutical prices for drugs. Tulsi Gabbard would come forward and say, I'm specifically going to talk about how we're going to use technology, right, to leap forward and really fund maybe some solutions in the health space that we haven't done before, specifically centered around using technology to deliver solutions that we haven't previously delivered, right? So this is a strong way where all of these people can move forward, and they can say, okay, here is a cohesive solution that we have brought together, that we have thought about as these 7 candidates, even in the middle of a primary race, right? We are saying this is our cohesive solution. We all back this solution, and no matter which one of us becomes president, this will be the solution, right? In addition to that, right, when one of us is president, all the rest will rally behind the banner and do what we can during that first term, right, to aid with this solution, right? We all are pledging our aid to this specific solution. Now, why would Yang and why would the other candidates do this, right? Well, one, it's never been done before, right? And this would be helpful to them because the media could look at this and say, oh my gosh, this is new. We've never seen anything like this, right? We've never seen a unified front among a selection of primary candidates, right? It would also show the world that the Democrats truly are different than the Republicans, that they care, they have the ability to have unique solutions that are different than the Republicans. The Republicans did nothing like this in 2016. So it would be very, just a very simple and short solution where the Democrats are saying, hey, look, we are different. We are more able to unify as a party and as candidates, right? And the other reason why is Andrew Yang just listening to his boy Scott Garibay and realizing the power of the comic book crossover. This is a proven method. People love this, right? It works. You can tell stories together that you cannot tell apart. It is not easy to do. It is incredibly difficult to do, actually. And this would take a lot of work from his team. But I think it would really, and he would come out of this looking like a unifier and a leader. And all those other candidates who are struggling and are behind, right, all behind Biden, Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren, all dyed-in-the-wool Washington insiders, all old-school politicians, all establishment candidates, it would show that the Dream Team, these 7, are set apart, that they are different, and they are playing the game in a different way, and that there's something special and unique about them. I think this would work. I think this is a great idea for Andrew Yang to drop in right now. That's my opinion. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below, please. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.